So my upbringing was domestic violence for about, my parents split up when I was 12, so definitely for those first 12 years of my life, abuse was going on at home. I commonly get asked, how old were you when you first remembered something? And I've tried to connect to that, but I seriously feel like I can't make a connection to an age because it's probably like so emotionally blocked that you're just not sure. But there are definitely some highlights that I remembered as like the strongest scenes or scenarios that happened, and I remembered that age. And the biggest thing that I went through that has literally made the biggest impact on my life today, my relationships, why I do what I do, is I witnessed my mum being choked, thrown up against the fridge, strangled in front of myself and my sisters, and we had to jump in there and pull my dad's hands off my mum's throat. Like, you do all the work to heal that, to emotionally overcome. But part of like PTSD is attaching to like the scenario at the moment. And you feel it so deep, like in your heart, that it literally just happened yesterday. You can connect to like the facial expression. You can connect to the act of pulling someone's hands away. And it's more that's really upsetting. And that happened when I was about 10, and I'm 30 now. So 20 years later, that still makes an impact. And the thing with domestic violence and someone who has gone through it, whether they're a child, whether they are experiencing it now, or whether they've just left, that impacts you for the rest of your life. But the change and where you grow and excel from it is having processes in place that helps you overcome. Like, I recognize it's a trigger. Like, I'm triggered in movies. I'm triggered seeing violence. I'm still triggered from those experiences. So in those moments, I have to recognize this isn't a threat to me. This is a movie. It's not in my life. I'm in a safe and secure marriage. I have done the work to change. So you have to catch your thoughts to stop you from going down that rabbit hole. So yeah, when I speak to someone going like, that's what I went through, it's always a moment of like, but I conquered that shit and overcome it. To witness your mum being strangled, almost dying, to stepping in, saving that scenario at 10, the impact that it has on you is like, you don't know who you are in this world. You are used to violence. You are used to arguments. You are used to seeing an angry father. You're used to like seeing disconnection through family. You are insecure. You fear a voice being raised. You fear doing the wrong thing because you don't know if that belt is coming for you. So that impact as a child, like you literally don't know who you are. And your actions and behavior that makes you think or feel like you're a bad child is driven out of abuse that you are experiencing at home. And kids that are going through that right now, because of my experience, I go, they're not a bad child. They're reacting from the home environment. And it's the parents' responsibility to love them, nurture them, emotionally connect with them, show them love, spend quality time with them, give them everything that they need. So when they grow up in the world, they are ready to go. And whatever they end up doing is totally on them. If a child is feeling disconnect, not loved, living in fear, living in survival mode, having to grow up quick, of course there is insecurities when they become an adult
and they rebel. They take drugs, they start drinking, they end up in fights, they skip school. All that is driven from the childhood experience. For those that I'm aware of, because my own experience, that's the path that you go on. So as a child, I was very quiet, I was very insecure, I kept to myself, I just put my head down. It was hard to connect with people, like just in general. I think the school thought there was something wrong with me, because I had teachers reach back out to me when I started publicly talking about my experience, saying, I always thought there was something going on at home. I knew you weren't just this quiet child, or you misbehaved on purpose, like there was something going on there. The impact that it has on you as, a preteen and around those years of like 14 to 16 is when you start drinking. You have sex from a young age because you got no self-worth. There's also the connection of a male paying you attention and you thinking that you're trying to fulfill that because the male in your life was supposed to love you wholeheartedly, deeply, spiritually, emotionally. So that other male who's external and starts to show you that power or that love or that time, I swear you don't even have the conscious thought going like, yep, this is who I need to be with. You're just drawn to that energy. On a soul level, that's what you've been yielding for and seeking your whole life. And then someone does that and you're like, this person must be good, or he must love me because, he slept with me, or he must love me because he tells me I'm beautiful, or he wants to spend time with me. It's your low self-esteem, low insecurities because of the impact of your environment. And even though it was fairly traumatic, what I witnessed, there were definitely still times where my family would hang out together. We'd still go on holidays. Dad would still show his love in different ways. Like, he was very mechanical. He worked on cars in the garage. We were out there with him working on the cars. He was into sport. He'd take us to athletics training. He would play with us outside. So my adult self has forgiven him because he was a struggled man. Most parents or people, humans who are abusive in some way, is typically struggling, dealing with their own trauma, repeating their cycle. Now, I know my dad was abused, black and blue, red, raw, really bad. My dad's mum was abused. So he has repeated the cycle. He has not learnt or has not had the systems in place, the processes in place to deal with his childhood trauma. So what does someone do? They do what they know. They do what they think is safe. They do what is comfortable. Now, I'm sure there were times when he was in his own thoughts, thinking, probably reflecting and going like, that wasn't the right thing to do. But he hasn't been able to deal with his own anger and pain, which then leads to an emotional outburst, which then leads to a physical outlet. And that's what happens with people who are experiencing pain and aren't dealing with the emotion. If you're not dealing with the emotion internally and you don't have a system or process in place, you will have an outburst because you need to express that at some point. You need to throw something, you need to punch a wall, you need to hit someone. You need an outlet because it's building and building and building internally. You're going to blow up because you haven't dealt with it. And that was the cycle that happened with my dad. He wasn't dealing with and didn't know how to. I don't want to say he needed to do this because he obviously didn't have the tools back then to work through his stuff. And my mum, myself and my sisters were on the other end of his hand. Unfortunately, the impact that it has on me today, I've been able to process a lot of that work and the insecurities, the self-worth, the value I have in myself, the belief, the confidence, the love I have, like all that I didn't have as a kid. Like, I didn't know how to love. I thought you would be abusive. Like, I used to punch holes in the walls. I punched on with my sisters. We've thrown knives at each other. I ran away from home. I've had the police called on me, all because of my environment. Nowadays, I don't do any of that, which is good, but I have this deep self-worth of myself, this deep love that I did have this confidence, you know, and I think, you know, that does come from both my parents. My dad was very confident. You know, he did believe in my athletic career. He did believe in, you know, the future that I wanted as a runner, because I was good at sport as well, and that's what helped me get through those dark times. He did believe in me, and I think that paid off. The strength that he had has definitely paid off. He has definitely instilled a lot of belief in myself and my sisters. So I've had all that. I've had to go through many, many years of trauma and abuse and adversity to build the resilience that I have today. I think that's a strength. How it impacts me in the not so good side, that I would call it. Becoming a mum and being married has literally been one of my toughest things today. You don't know how you're going to be as a mum until you're a mum. You may think, I'm going to be like this, I'm going to teach her this or teach it that. You don't know until you're in it. And the triggers that come up, that if we have an argument, my mindset will go, this isn't where I want to be. Is this part of the cycle? That's the rabbit hole. But where I then have to apply my process is, I've broken the cycle. This is exactly what I've done. This is the man that I've wanted my whole life. He protects me, he cares for me, he provides for me, he makes me feel secure. He's the most amazing father. And you have to flip all those stories, because your mindset is so powerful. It will lead you to believe, it will lead me to believe that I've repeated the cycle because of an argument. You can have the most loving, connected, happy marriage in the world if you believe that and if you do the work. So I have to flip my mindset sometimes to go, this is what I've asked for. This is exactly who I wanted to marry, because you just fall off that track. It's safer to be negative. It's safer to think I'm not worthy, because that's what you've done your whole life. You've played it safe and stayed within comfort. It's harder to be vulnerable and say, this is a trigger for me now. I'm speaking from my pain, not from my love side. So those who've gone through some form of abuse, hardship, adversity, loss, grief, typically plays out in our relationships, because, you know, there's someone there really close to you in your life. So how it impacts me today is, yes, there's still insecurities, there's still fears, there's still shit that I've got to deal with massively becoming a mum and in my marriage. But I've got to openly communicate that with my husband, and he is so supportive and understands that and protects that and navigates that and listens. And even if he doesn't understand straight away, he respects my space for allowing me to be triggered, to then step into that love even more. And that's what it comes down to. For everyone, we are searching for this love. And that's what, you know, beauty and strength is really about. That love comes from within. I can't expect John to just love me if I'm not showing up and doing the work as well. And vice versa, it takes two. He's got triggers, he's got his own stuff. I've got to navigate and understand that as well. If we're both triggered at the same time, do you think we want to come together and be so loving? Probably not, because we're both in that really strong triggered energy. Okay, cool. What system and process can we put in place that's going to allow us to step into our vulnerability to get through this trigger so we can come together as a unity and overcome our childhood shit, pretty much. This impact will go on for the rest of my life, but it doesn't impact me to not live the life that I want to live. I'm here to live the life, to break the cycle, to be the voice, to be the soundboard, to leave that legacy. It's not controlling me to not live the life I want to live. Unfortunately for some, and what I do see, it does control them for the rest of their lives till they go to the grave. And fortunately, that's not the case for me. And at the end of the day, my parents did the best they could with everything they knew and the tools they had at that time. Everyone's definition of love is different. You speak to my mum, her story is very different. Speak to my sisters, their story is very different. This is a personal story, a personal experience from my personal emotions and what I've personally done, how it's personally impacted me. That's going to push me to impact others so they can personally make the impact that they need to make for the connection that they need to in their life, in their journey, in their vision, and their purpose on the world. My purpose is to be here for others and be a voice, to break the cycle of domestic violence. And that's just what I'll continue to do.